Yeah, thank you very much for sticking around. Somebody once told me that being given the graveyard shift is actually a huge compliment because it means you can keep people in the room, and I choose to believe that. I choose to take that whenever I'm put on the last panel of the day, and I hope my panelists will believe that as well. Thank you so much for racing through that, Beny. I was taking so many notes I couldn't keep up with you, but hopefully we, along with the other two panelists, will start to dig into some of those topics in a bit more detail now. We are aware we are between you and your bed, a wine, a beer, so we will definitely keep to time. The one other thing to just say is that the gentleman who was going to talk about blockchain technologies is the gentleman who is stuck in Dubai, so this will be a panel that's focusing mostly on AI. But I think that follows on really nicely, given that you had to rush quite quickly through your presentation. So to get straight into it, rather than starting with who are you, where do you come from, blah, 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 I'd like to start off by asking you each, where are the most interesting places you are seeing AI being used in financial services right now? And I'm hoping that you will then tie that seamlessly into what you guys do and give you a chance to plug your various wares. Paul, I'll come to you first to give Beny a chance to breathe.
I figured I was going to say, I hope you let him take a breather and don't make him keep going. So I could probably go on for the next 34 minutes about where I see interesting applications of AI. If I had to connect it to the world that I live in, which is the fintech financial services space, and I think Beny even alluded to it a little bit, is when you see the combination of, let's call it behavioral science, and the application of AI to that, and how that can influence so many different types of businesses and so many different processes. And again, just to connect it to what we do, we're a step away from what Beny alluded to. I'm in the debt collection space. And if you look at the way behavioral scoring in combination with AI is allowing for automation, it's basically almost revolutionary for our segment. And it's leapfrogging by, literally quasi from quarter to quarter what used to happen in 10 years. And the fact that you can combine technology with certain sciences and the speed with which you can basically adapt to what's out in the market is where we're absolutely fascinated by what's even happened in the last year. But there's also another side to what I'm saying. So we can all talk about technology and AI and everything. What for us is probably the most, let's say, visible thing around AI is the acceptance of it. So until a year ago, we did not utter the word AI because it had almost become a dirty word. It was almost perverted, it was overused, it was machine learning that everyone was calling AI. And since about a year, all of a sudden it's sexy again, which for us is great because we've been doing AI for close to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who does write for Forbes, the number of press releases I get that just start with AI-based or AI-powered, and you're like, there's no AI in this. This is a spreadsheet, but thank you for using the buzzword. Panis, how about you? Where is the most interesting place you're seeing AI being used in financial services?
Okay, first of all, thank you to the organizers for inviting me. Beny, you did a great job, by the way, with the presentation. I have seen more than 500 presentations for AI because I'm a journalist. So I was traveling Web Summit actually recently, and the whole, I got probably more than 500 pitches about AI startups, etc. So it's an AI, let's say, year, this year. Okay, as a journalist, sometimes I get to a preview from companies. I will not mention names. Something interesting there, I saw a lot of advanced chatbots that they actually use deepfake. So they fake because when you go to a bank, you need to see the same face, same voice, etc. So the idea here is, okay, let's create a deepfake with a chatbot that will be actually the same name, the same voice that will speak to you. Some others I have seen in a company that does algorithmic AI very well, and they are training their AI for the last 5 years. They have very, very good results in returns of that algorithm. They are not yet, this is stealth fintech. And a lot of interesting stuff in the risk and compliance certification, KYC. I believe in the next 5 years or so, that would be more advanced. Yeah, that's.
Yes, AI and risk and compliance, as we mentioned several times today, is an area that it's really heating up. Beny, if you've recovered, would you like to pick one of, which you mentioned quite a few sort of different instances in your presentation. Which do you think is the most interesting that we should be looking at from a financial services perspective?
Is this on? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
All right, good. Yeah, I think there's two of them that I love. One is the one I just talked about, which is, again, utilizing AI to reduce bias and sort of augment data so you can make more intelligent decisions, which again, I think the financial world, I was an internal auditor at IBM when I finished college, I don't know why, but, there's just so much that you can absorb from financial statements or records, etc. So one of these, this is for me one of the ones that I talked about. The second one is related to that, but it's again, I got an MBA in finance, but I have a hard time reading financial statements and actually getting any intelligent conclusions out of it, right? So you have data, but you don't have insights. So one of the things that we actually do, also with evolution in this genetic algorithms, is to take unstructured data. So you can take a document that you issue to your investors, which is usually 20 pages long, right? So I invest in many funds and I barely read it, as most people. And then have the AI basically scan through that, and think about it, it's not actually quite obvious. You're not scanning photos, you're scanning text with tables and labels and all kinds of things, disclaimers in font 3.5, and actually with NLP or natural language processing, actually transforming this unstructured data into actually a data that is structured, that you can actually utilize AI for prediction, for whatever it is that you want to do. So it's hard to see that. I have a demo that visualizes, but it's a fascinating thing.
Can I add something to that? Because that's a fascinating point. What you're alluding to, and here's the real world quasi instance of that, and you know this probably better than I do. Unstructured data is one of the biggest problems that we have because we sell to enterprise. And everyone talks about whiz-bang technology, and everyone has like the next best thing. From my VC background, I've been seeing this for 20 years. And everyone talks about selling to the enterprise, but the biggest hurdle is unstructured data. Because to get any technology to work, you have to get the data into your system. And the way it's done now is so clunky and so quasi time consuming and so costly. So the concept of what you're talking about connected to the reality of implementing enterprise software, that's one of the biggest solutions, if you think about it, for enterprise. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that because we deal with that every day.
Just to add quickly, when I mentioned the slide of financial services and healthcare, those are the two sectors where we use this a lot. Yep. Because as somebody in finance, if you're a doctor and you have all these documents, it's very hard to scan through them and get any conclusions, right? So it's a very powerful thing. I'm happy to talk to you about it.
I mean, to pick up on that point that you were making, Beny, as well, what you just described is actually somebody's job at the moment. I know, I have done it. Oh, yeah. I have worked for investors and gone through all those documents and come up with, the summary, which is the due diligence document, or the investment memo. So on that note, one of the biggest concerns around AI is, oh my God, it's going to take our jobs. And that doesn't matter which industry you're in. But I just wanted to come back to you, Beny, because we've talked about this sort of in the prep call, is that what are banks going to look like in 10 years if AI is taking, well, let's start with my job of doing all the analysis, but where else do you think AI will have an impact on employment specifically within financial services? Yeah,
I love talking about the future. I personally will take the spacecraft of Elon Musk to Mars. But going back to your question, now, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I've done that kind of job, and frankly, it's one of the least exciting. That's probably where most people feel, even if they're junior financial analysts, I'm probably underutilized just doing this manual work, right? So yes, there are many jobs that might disappear. If you take parallel other industries, many paralegals spend 2 weeks scanning documents and figure out which template to use, and so on, so on. You can go in any industry. But the point is, yes, I don't think those jobs will be 100% eliminated. Definitely, there is kind of a Pareto rule where what you would need X number of people to do that. You can do it with a fraction of that. And the benefit is, yes, you may actually reduce a few employees in your team. You may actually create new jobs. For example, you're going to need jobs that define the governance of that defines, all those models, they are, at the end of the day, enabling some decision making, right? So at the end of the day, AI cannot be accountable for the decision. So the doctor or the CFO or somebody is going to actually stamp and sign and say, yeah, I'm doing it, even though it was 80% done by AI. So I think a lot of those jobs will be able to actually use what human beings do well, better than AI, which is reasoning today, right? And all the things that I mentioned, like scanning a document and collecting all that, I guarantee you AI will do it more efficiently. I think those people would not miss doing those tasks, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I used to call myself affectionately a data monkey. That's
Sarah,
what I would do, just sit
can
and
I
do
add
data.
something?
Panis, please.
Can I add something on what Beny said? It's a fact that we are going to lose jobs. That's a fact. Also, it's a fact that the predictions are the more jobs are going to create out of AI. But also what the government needs to do in that aspects, and people and companies, they need to retrain, reskill, actually there was also a good example, a good experiment in Boston Consulting recently. You can find the paper and check it out, that they have checked people that they actually have worked with ChatGPT and the other generative tools, and the other people, they didn't work. Actually, it was fascinating because the results were there that in the short term, the results were that the people that they work with ChatGPT and other generative tools, they did more quality job and more faster.
Yeah, so if you're working with it, you actually get better at your job.
Yeah, but the quality factor was a bit, you didn't know what to happen. Of course, in the short term, that happened. Nobody knows what happened in the long term.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're talking about ChatGPT, particularly in financial services, different companies' approach to it. So you've seen some of the big banks go, absolutely nobody is using this within our company. And then you've got Klarna, huge bank, huge payments company, which is the biggest user of ChatGPT Enterprise. So every single employee of Klarna can use ChatGPT Enterprise in their daily work, should they so wish. And to your point, Panis, like 50% of them are using it, and 50% of them aren't, and largely to your point in product development. So it's interesting to see we're still at that point where at the moment we're working out.
And just to add one more point, again, I'm making parallels back and forth between health and finance, but they're pretty similar states. It's a financial analyst job won't be eliminated, but what we say is the financial analyst that knows how to use AI will replace the financial analyst who doesn't embrace AI, right? So it's kind of an evolution, and it's similar to what we do with this whole evolution thing. It's you're going to actually, like ChatGPT, allow people to actually be able to do more intelligent creative work. You're also going to allow them to be more strategic in terms of understanding, future strategy, things such as controls, ethics. So there's going to be a chief ethics officer. And the other thing is, people talk a lot about losing jobs. So there is a shortage of data scientists, for example. You can't find them, right? So the other job that will maybe created, I don't know what the title will be because I don't have a crystal ball, it's going to be sort of a financial analyst that is a junior data scientist, right? Because he understands finance where the actual today's data science don't. And that's one of the main challenges. You don't have domain experts. So empowering those people with finance backgrounds to utilize generative AI and all those technologies to actually help those models and validate them. Those models need training and they need the expertise of human beings. So it's just a matter of reutilizing your skills. There's a lot of reskilling. Yes, there are people who will not be able to be retrained, but that's a matter of,
Yeah, I mean, everybody can be retrained. It's just not necessarily using AI is how they will find a new role. Paul, did you want to add something there before we moved on?
I was just going to make an anecdote, and I can't remember who brought this out, but they took what an iPhone does today, and all the devices that it represents, and they put it on like a table, and there was like 50 different devices.
You mean like a calculator, a
They're just
dictaphone,
showing video recorder,
yeah.
and all the things that an iPhone does nowadays. And to your point, if you think about the role, let's call it financial analyst, it could be any industry, it could be an assistant. If you take someone with the technology of today and put them 30 years back, they'll look like a genius, leveraging technology. So to your point, if you think forward, whoever's in the lower level job leveraging technology, so
Exactly.
the current day investment analyst is actually the future data scientist,
Exactly.
not because of skill set and domain expertise, but because of the technology that they can leverage. And so you didn't ask me the question, but I'm kind of indirectly answering will we lose jobs? No, I think just things are going to change, and people will continually leverage technology and just adapt on top of that technology.
Well, that kind of takes me on to the next question. So we talked a bit about employment. I wanted to talk about kind of within financial services, the new products and services that are being enabled by AI, the creation. And I wanted to come to you, Paul, because I know you're something of a serial entrepreneur. This is not your first business. How has the wider spread availability of AI enabled you to develop, solve new problems, I guess? The business you're doing now, would it have been possible to do that 30 years ago without AI, basically, I guess is the question.
So the funny thing is that our business exactly as we do it today existed 30 years ago very manually. So the fact that technology has evolved and caught up, unfortunately, the space that we're in is pretty much still stuck at least 10, if not 20 years in the past. In some countries, even due to regulatory reasons. So like, for example, in Germany, in our business, for collections, you have to actually still send a physical letter. So this is required by law. It's almost silly in the sense that you send out a letter and then you send an email, and the problem is usually resolved before that letter even arrives, especially now with Munich in Germany, nothing's arriving. But all kidding aside, our business hasn't really changed fundamentally what it's doing. But as I answered the question about the individual jobs, this industry itself, leveraging technology, has become so much more efficient, so much more cost effective, requiring far less resources, allowing those resources to be deployed to something more relevant. And again, just using a simple anecdote, if you think about all the people that were doing manual things in debt collection, you can repurpose those people for customer service. And if you think about debt collection, what we're trying to do in debt collection is, instead of having someone basically chased by a bat, trying to get them to repay, we're looking at them as a customer that you don't want to lose. So you want to do everything possible to help them repay their unpaid debt so that they remain a loyal customer. And how do you do that? By implementing technology, you can communicate with them. You can make it a two-way conversation versus just sending a letter threatening someone with legal action, which is basically what happened 30 years ago. So that's how we're leveraging AI.
So I guess it's less of a new product and service and more of a way of, like, it's possible to start a new business now because you don't need that capital behind you. You don't need those resources. You can get to market quicker and you can solve a problem quicker.
There's two things, or two ways I can even answer that, because I think when we talked about it on the phone, we were talking about also like the venture capital concept. So think about it from two perspectives. Not just about starting the business, think first about the VC side. So VCs are already implementing AI to basically screen the markets. So it could be that the AI finds you once you've launched your business, and once you're building your business, you might actually be able to almost leapfrog what 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I've been that long in this business, so what it just used to cost to start a business, the people you had to hire, the amount of quasi-resources, not just cash, but also people that you needed to get a business off the ground, can be significantly reduced by leveraging AI and allowing a lot of things to be done automatically. Even development itself. Developers, you always talk about the 10x developer. I think there's developers now that using AI effectively can become 10x developers. Again, people who weren't necessarily geniuses from a skill set can become geniuses using the technology, which again allows you to build your business far more effectively and potentially a far more successful business.
I mean, if people are interested in hearing more about the use of AI in investing in VC, I'm moderating another panel tomorrow morning, so do stick around. I'm just going to plug my own wares.
I didn't plan that.
Panis, I just wanted to come to you. We've talked a little bit about kind of where AI is being used and kind of how you can use it to build a more successful business. But I know one of the areas that you look at quite a lot is marketing. And kind of how customer communications. Is that something that you are seeing AI dramatically help with as well?
Yeah, as I mentioned a bit there earlier, what I see at least in the chatbot area and the assistance in general of AI in the fintech space is, I believe in the next, I know that somebody already created a product on that, that you will have the deep fake of the employee. And you go there, and you go online, and you have the employee with the same voice, the same everything, and you'll speak to him. And as NLP is growing the last 10 years, and it's growing, I mean, natural language processing, this will become very easy to discuss, will save you a lot of money for the banks, the companies. Another nice example that I have seen the last years is with Plum. It's an AI assistant. Actually, it's a Cypriot founder. AI assistant that takes all your small savings and then it immediately invests in funds, indices, etc. In some, so you don't need to. For example, you can save a few bucks every day, and it can invest it for you. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think the one that sort of everybody knows about the use of AI in financial services or outside of is this customer service piece, whether that's chatbots or whether that's using, NLP to identify people, to identify sentiment and as people are speaking to them. But it is going to be interesting to see how that goes, because I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I've had some terrible experiences with chatbots or, the automated phone versions where I'm just shrieking down the phone going, oh, that's not what I said.
Yeah, just to add almost that, chatbots will be there and you'll see that and et cetera, but combining with humans, it's always your marketing improvement will go up. So at one point the chatbot might not work, it will direct you immediately, it will understand, it will direct you immediately to a human. Combining two, at least according to some also Google reports, it's much better than only the AI. But of course, you have seen now all these generative AI tools, how fast they grow, how fast. It's scary, the future. At the same time, it's also lots of opportunities.
Yeah, the future is always scary and exciting, hopefully in equal measure. Beny, did you want to pick something up there?
I was just thinking on your question. I think there is two different areas here that we're talking about. I think the most classic applications that, back in 2016 when I built this team in Middle East and Africa, we were selling vertical solutions. And the most famous vertical solutions that we sold with our partners were, Customer 360, and you get analytics from your customer. There's one called Next Best Action. So you can, when you're on the phone, you can actually look at, maybe I should offer them increase the limit on the credit card. It's basically, as I say, it's not a chatbot actually offering you directly, but it's basically giving me intelligence. Now, those, to be honest, they are, like I said, we were selling them in 2016. They're not that revolutionary today. They are classic models. I think what's interesting now with LLM, and again, large language models and ChatGPT, as we know, they're still evolving, but they're evolving very fast. One of the maybe not so intuitive ways, rather than thinking just about chatbots, which was most people think about, is thinking about creativity. And it's hard to believe that, because most people think, well, AI is not creative, right? I'm creative, I'm a human being, and I'll teach these things and it will just run these models. But as you see, ChatGPT is actually great for marketing creative. So, I don't know how many times you use that, but sometimes I'm thinking, by the way, I said yesterday, I'm doing this keynote, I'm planning about talking about this, do you have any suggestions for XYZ? And some really crazy ideas come there, and I'm like, wow, I never thought about it. And maybe spending 2 hours with my colleagues, I would never come with those answers. And so the reason why I'm going this way is, A, you can use it for the way you communicate with your customers, right? Doesn't mean that, again, they're interacting directly with a chatbot. It could mean that, again, applying the behavioral science things, that it's scientifically proven that the way you communicate and offer to a client, even if the ROI is exactly the same, but the way you message it, and there's tons and tons of evidence there in the books, can actually generate a different outcome. So, for example, people have a common aversion loss. So there was an experiment that was run that says, if you do XYZ in the next 29 days, I'll give you a credit of $20. And most customers would just I'm not into it. But then there was a different way, which is, I'm going to put $30 in your accounts, $20, whatever, and if in 29 days you don't agree to whatever, I will remove it. Now everybody accepted it. Now it's exactly mathematically the same function. You're giving up $20. But again, those kinds of things, they're a combination of AI, behavioral science, but it can actually lead you to a different way to engage your customers that's more creative, that's more fun, and actually that brings more value.
Yeah, I think the behavioral science piece is something we mentioned when we were discussing this panel. It was mentioned earlier when we were talking about gamification, and we sort of posited it might be fun or not fun to have a psychologist on the panel to see kind of like where that conversation went. I just wanted to pick up on what you mentioned in your presentation briefly, but is relevant to my next question, is about AI and financial inclusion, because that's another area where talking about excitement and opportunity, financial inclusion is one that's raised a lot. I know that Beny and Paul have slightly different opinions on this, which is partly why I set it up. So I don't know, Beny, do you want to start with how can AI make sort of finance more inclusive? And then Paul, I know that you have some thoughts on perhaps the dangers around that space. So I'll just set you two off and let you go.
We can start fighting later on.
It won't be a fight, because it's two sides of the same coin.
We can agree to disagree, it's okay. Shall we go for it? So again, there's two main angles here. And the first is what I briefly talked about, which is, well, most people don't have access to traditional banking services, especially if you go to developing markets, but even US and more mature markets, it's the case. So most people have access to a smartphone, or at least to some form of digital. So one way is to allow those services to be offered to people like that, and what I talked about, Motivate AI, is one of those things, which is how can I, but then there's another level, which is what kind of products can I create? So I was product manager at Microsoft. It's a lot of work to create a new product or to drive innovation. So in financial services, I find it particularly even harder because, let's put it this way, banks are not that creative, right? So I want to create another program for a specific audience. Well, I can actually get pretty much a lot of data on this audience. I can actually make some simulations. I can actually do some tests. So there is that angle, which is again on the product innovation itself. But then there is a second angle, which is in parallel, which is financial literacy, right? So a lot of those people, maybe you offer them a lot of things, but I don't know how to decide, right? So using generative AI and lots of things that we have today, you could actually bring those customers closer to the potential they can realize, because if I don't know what I don't know, right? So by engaging with them and actually not just selling them and offering things that they have no idea how to decide, if you actually create a way to get them more able to make financial decisions and to understand better how to choose their products and so on, there's a vast population that's not educated in the financial world, right? And it's significant.
I think financial literacy is a really interesting topic because there are so many companies out there trying to solve it. But what I think a lot of people fail to realize is if you're financially illiterate, it's not because you want to be, it's because you don't know how not to be. And it could be that you don't have access to the information, but a lot of people also just don't have the resources, right? You're a single parent, you're working full time, you have children to feed. Do you have time to sit down and read a blog on how to manage your retirement accounts? No, you don't. Even if you do have time, do you have the mental capacity to take that in and then the energy to act on it? Probably not. So if we can use AI to find a way to make these things actionable, easy, and kind of personalized, then hopefully that's a way to bring more people in. Because I think there's a lot of patronizing when it comes to financial literacy, and people don't take into account why people are excluded. Sometimes because they can't access, but many times, sorry, I'm now speaking. I should ask the questions. Ask the questions, Sarah.
Just a quick thing. You know where financial actually literacy happens right now? In TikTok. People, with the bats and pros and cons, but you don't have time, but you have time, half an hour to see TikToks. So there's a lot of people there that they are trying now to educate people how to spend their money, how to do their money. And also I expect to see in the near future platforms that they will create all these short videos, and people in Africa with their mobile, they will log in and they will have all this video database to learn. That's the future.
But I would add one more thing, so kind of along the lines of both your thinking, and this is before the fight. If you think about, every time I think about AI, and especially like we started with customer service, and now we're talking about people who are financially illiterate, let's call it that. Think of AI versus outbound, or conversely, inbound. Think of it outbound. So what I'm thinking, maybe this is 10 years out, but why can't I, so to speak, have my data train my AI model or my AI virtual self, and think about the concept kind of, again, from a technology perspective, still not possible, but think about the people that you're trying to basically give financial inclusion to. If their behavior, their history, their quasi-wants and wishes and whatnot were training a model, they could potentially then be offered services based on whatever the behavioral science determines is the best quasi-next step for them. And I, in general, want that to happen online. So if I call someone in a customer service situation, if you think about the way it works now, if I've been a customer of theirs and I've made multiple purchases and I've potentially even returned things and they see my behavior, they capture that behavior. And if you think about all your behavior being captured and creating a model for you that then could be used outbound towards whoever's working with you or interacting with you, be it a bank, be it a retailer, be it whatever it is, that's where I get very excited about all the opportunities when it comes to customer service, when it comes to financial inclusion, because the single house or the single mom who doesn't have the time could potentially be put into a situation where she is coached, or even automated systems are making the best decision for her and for her financial well-being.
Yeah, as you say, that
Yeah,
combines.
but Paul, that will never happen in Europe with all the GDPR.
There's so many problems.
And the privacy.
There's so many problems.
Privacy. In
And
Asia, Africa, yeah, you'll have that.
you have to opt.
China.
It's going to be an opt-in, but I still think that there's a lot of things that if you think about the future, there's going to be a lot more opt-in.
China already is doing that with the social
Not with
credit
opt-in.
scoring.
Not with opt-in.
I mean, the biggest story there is, which is they're trying to enforce by law and are struggling to do so, is that actually every piece of data that exists about me, I should own. That should belong to me. And if you want it, I have to decide under what terms I give it to you. So you pay me for it, or you give me something in return. But we are a very long way off that. That's the dream world. This is flashing at me, and I don't want to keep anybody later than we already have. I had one final question. I think everybody's touched on it, but I want you to pin your colors to the mast, and I want each of you to tell me what you think the greatest opportunity is for using AI in financial services, because we've discussed a few here today, but the one, just give me the biggest opportunity that you see, and it could be coming back to that point about financial inclusion. It could be something else. You were prepared. I did tell them they have this question coming, by the way. I haven't just thrown this at them.
Well, I 30 seconds just to add to what he said. I do think the whole key there is the personalization, right? So, for example, as you said, less is more. So I invest through Fidelity, and they offer me a lot of webinars. I don't have time to sit through any of them. They're 1 hour long.
Nobody does.
But for example, in Israel, there's a startup called Rise Up, which is created by the founder of Aleph Venture Capital. And it's a super simple one, and for immigrants. So I arrived in Israel, I don't speak Hebrew, I don't know anything about the banking system, I don't know what to do with my money. And basically you answer a few parameters, and it starts to very simply offer you specific things, hints, etc., etc. So there's simple ways to do that that's more engaging and save time. But to answer your question, I think the main opportunity is for the VC world. I'm very biased because I built a venture capital fund 10 years ago, and I knew nothing about it, and maybe I still don't know anything about it, but I know all the mistakes I made. And frankly, I don't like to insult anyone in the VC industry, but I talk to a lot of colleagues, I invest with some VC funds. I think, again, a lot of the work, it's still kind of, let me see through my Excel model or whatever, and we used to joke in Microsoft, PowerPoint and Excel accept anything you put in there, right? So I think the main thing is I did a lot of panels with VCs, and they all talk about AI, and it's like, how do you use AI? And they, well, I have an AI tool to correct my spelling, I guess. So I think the main opportunity there is when you look at the broader picture, and VC is a very difficult thing to forecast. So just creating models, being adaptable and sort of accommodating new things, geopolitics, whatever. The world is moving very fast. I think that could be a very compelling thing for the whole world of investment.
Again, if you want to hear more about AI and VC, another panel tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I gave you the...
Exactly, you set me up for that.
We agreed on it.
Exactly. Paul.
I'll go a bit more macro, and we already alluded to this. So I think there's two things that are ultimately going to happen, and I'll keep using anecdotes. The poorest person today lives better than a king did 200 years ago. So my hope for AI, and I'm just thinking big. I used to be a VC, so you have to be somewhat delusional. Well, being delusional is good. But what I'm going to say is that I think the opportunity for AI is to get rid of a lot of menial tasks, either for personal or as people or as employees. And I think that there's so many things we do now that are absolutely ridiculous. Like, what's the point? It's basically menial labor. What we did in the fields, 50 or 100 years ago as farmers, now we have these stupid jobs where people are sitting in, cubicle farms, basically toiling away, doing just ridiculous shit. I think that a lot of those things will disappear, and people will either be a lot more creative or a lot more analytical. People will become more data scientists per se, and I see that as a huge opportunity if you leverage AI, or if companies or if we as individuals leverage AI. God, I hate doing my tax return. Why do I have to do my tax return? Can we not automate all of this? Can't it be automated on both sides? Why do I ever have to sit down and look at my finances to do a tax return? Just using a stupid example. These are all these menial tasks that I think AI could basically get rid of in our personal lives as well as at work.
If anybody's got an AI program that can do a tax return and also communicate with the British Tax Office for me, please come and find me, because that's the bane of my life.
You work with the tax authority in Israel.
I'm not sure. I wish that could help. Panis, finally to you, what is the greatest opportunity you see for AI and financial services?
Okay, we have different opportunities, at least for me. We have opportunities for employees that work in the companies, all these fintech and finance companies. The opportunity here is for the companies to use AI and automate a lot of stuff so they can give to their employees more time, more creative time to think out of the box. That's an opportunity, or give them space, have a more balanced lifestyle. The other opportunities for investors, actually have seen 2 weeks ago, the European Commission launched in Lisbon Innovation Radar. It's an app that actually says you how much disruptive is this startup or not. Actually, it was an idea that was started. I was planning to do it 7 years ago, but something happened. We didn't got the money. So, and the other opportunities for the people just to use tools like Plan, like Let's Direct, or other tools that they actually help them to optimize. Also, there is a big opportunity in algorithmic trading that you will be able to go to a platform. By the way, this disclaimer, that's not an investment advice. You'll be able to follow this guy or this AI that will generate you for this return, and that would be like 95%, so that you will win so much money in X of amount of time. So these are the biggest opportunities. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. We are only 21 seconds over. I think that's pretty good going. Thank you so much to my panel. You packed so much in. I think we followed on really nicely from the previous keynote. So thank you very much, and thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you, everybody.